not only around the United States, but around different countries. He's been around the block. We say it, but I'm saying it. When I say this man's been around the block, he's been around the block, took a break, and took a walk around the block again. Bryan Stoops from New York City, Queens, New York City. Bryan Stoops Comedy. He runs the Just Edgy Comedy Enough. The comedy show, it's Just Edgy Enough, his promotion. He's been performing in 22 countries and 5 continents. Exotic cities like Melbourne, Casablanca, and Newark. He's been an educator for 22 years. He runs regular shows at the Whiskey Cellar at 77 East 7th Street. He's performed at the Big Comedy Club, Gotham Comedy Club in New York City. Also the Best Comedy Club, Near Me Theater. He's been on that stage. He's been all over social media. Anytime you put on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram or TikTok, Bryan Stoops is there. He's one of the hardest workers in this business. I am so happy to have him here today. And I will tell you, he has had the watch party on May 2nd. His special, his comedy special that was taped at the Jolly Sailor, South Sea in Portsmouth, United Kingdom. Bryan Stoops, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joel. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you. That's a really well-researched, nice intro. Thank you very much for that.
I appreciate you, brother, and this is going to be a great one. Bryan, you and I, met back last October at the Whiskey Cellar. That was a show that you promoted, and it was a Just Edgy comedy show. As a matter of fact, we're going to start right up. I have a poster flyer here that you had made. The Just Edgy Comedy Show, Bryan Stoops in the Whiskey Cellar, Sunday, October 19, 2025. There was no ticket price, just a minimum of 2 drinks. You want more than 2 drinks? No one minded. Drink as much as you want, but at least 2. And it's www.bryanstoops.comedy.com website, the Whiskey Cellar, 77 East 7th Street. Bryan, you had put me on that show as the headliner that night. I worked with some great comedians, and I want to thank you publicly right now. I like to do that on my podcast. Thank you for that opportunity, Bryan. So glad to have you. Bryan is also a great family man. I met his wife and his son. Very pleasant people. What a show. What a night. New York City, right there with Bryan Stoops. Bryan, let's talk about it. Where were you born and where do you live right now? Let's start off with that.
So I was born in San Diego County in Southern California. I spent my first 40 years of my life in my wife and I refer to it like the Bermuda Triangle. It's Eastern Los Angeles County suburbs where my parents still live today. And then we lived in San Bernardino County for many years, and I misspent a lot of my young adulthood in Northern Orange County, and then just a little before a month after I turned 40, we moved to the New York City area. At the time, I was leaving a job. I had actually gone into administration in a high school in LA County. That was a big goal of mine for a long time. My kids were still really young, and I was looking to go back into the classroom. We had started coming out to New York as tourists on a pretty regular basis, and for the heck of it, I filed some applications out here, got a job offer, and our mindset was, if we like it, we'll think about staying. If we don't like it, we'll always have that year that we lived in New York. We had sold this townhouse that we'd been in for about 13 years, a year or so before that. So we were in the position to give this a try. And obviously we still like it. I live in Forest Hills, Queens. We've been in Forest Hills about 6 years now. Statistically the safest neighborhood in the borough of Queens, because nothing ever happens here, but it's nice. It's been a nice place to raise little New Yorkers, so we've been here 8 years. My youngest, my daughter, is 16 now. She's a junior in high school, and my son, who you met, is 19 now. So you can do the math on that. And, you know, they kind of grew up here. Like they had their, you know, little kid times in Southern California. And then their more formative years, they've grown up here. And here we are, Joel.
That's excellent, Bryan. Bryan,
Yeah.
you know, it's been said about you. I know you personally. I've known you going on 1 year now. And in the year, we've kept in quite a bit of contact on and off. And we actually got to, you know, work last October together. But you are known as, and I call it the way it is, folks. If you're a fan of the podcast, we have a lot of fans that listen. I just call it the way it is. Bryan Stoops is not only a great comedian and a great producer. Bryan, you're a great family man, but you're also a promoter that does what he says and says what he does. I mean, you keep your promises. You work really hard. You push all the talent that you have. You make everybody feel very comfortable. And you're a father and a husband all at the same time. Bryan Stoops is here tonight. Get close to your cameras and get close to your phones, whatever you're doing, listening. There's the man right there. He's got the new fresh haircut, and he's ready to go. He's one of the best. So pleasant to work with. Bryan Stoops, I know personally because I've shared the stage with him once, and I plan on sharing it with him again in the near future. I'm sure if we lived closer, we'd be doing a lot more work together, Bryan and I put your money on that one. Bryan, when was your debut in stand-up comedy? Where, when, and for who?
So I started stand up during the pandemic.
Wow.
I had been. I'll talk about some of my other background because it's relevant to something that's coming up. That it only got scheduled after you and I set this date, Joel. But we have time. We'll talk about it for sure.
Okay.
So and let me just acknowledge what your kind words, and I really do appreciate that. And, you know, I feel so lucky with the caliber of comedians with whom I get to interact by virtue of trying to treat everybody fairly and being really explicit and open in my communication. And it's all about like, what would I like, when I think about doing somebody else's show. And so, you know, also how do I set up the comedians who are on my show for success? How do I make sure they have as little anxiety as possible, so that they can just come in and relax and kill, destroy, maim on stage, and have a wonderful time. So that's the goal. And again, just by virtue of being really committed to that being the vibe. And I was just talking about this with some comedian friends like last week. I just feel really lucky the caliber of people that come out of the woodwork that I get to work with, by virtue of just trying to be a nice, pleasant, you know, explicit, positive, communicative type of person.
Yes.
And so, like, if that's the vibe we're cultivating, and if everybody's committed to that, you know, you can't help but have some great shows.
That's
and
correct.
Be able to find great people, and it's a really nice vibe. So, in 2020, I had actually, that was the year that I had gone full-time. Now I'm an educator, so I live my life in academic years. So we're talking about like 2019 academic year, 2019 to 2020. That was the year I had gone full-time with martial arts. So I have a really extensive, like about almost 30-year background in martial arts.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. I still consider, even though I get to see him far less than when I was in Southern California, I still consider Dan Inosanto, we would say Guru Dan, that just means teacher. I still consider him my primary instructor, and that's Bruce Lee's best friend and training partner. And wow. Yeah, and when we think about Bruce Lee as a researcher, looking into the sum total of martial arts information that was available, up until his passing, 1973. This is obviously way pre-internet. What the amount of martial knowledge Bruce Lee was able to gather was really quite astounding. And Guru Dan has really perpetuated that and perpetuated not just being, and this is not a knock because I know this is part of your background and my lineage. So I don't want to verbally minimize anything, definitely thinking about mixed martial arts for sure and exploring combat sports and those things, but also just going as deep into your martial studies as possible and exploring multiple systems. And so that's really what's been modeled for me. I started in that lineage in 2004. You can do the math on that, and that was really, at the time, I had been reading about these people for several years in books and martial arts magazines, and I really felt like I had found the martial arts lineage that I was always looking for. And so I opened and closed a part-time martial arts academy in Southern California. I had this beautiful garage. It was up on a hill. And right after I defended my dissertation for my doctorate in 2011, I literally opened up a part-time martial arts academy in my garage. I had a home-based business license. I paid taxes. It's just minus the commercial shopping center storefront. This was a legally licensed martial arts academy. And so I opened up a commercial school in California. My kids were still really little. My wife asked me to move things back into the garage. We were back in the garage for a couple of years. I opened up another martial arts academy at the same time I was trying to be an administrator at a high school. That was a crazy couple of years.
Wow. We
kind of moved things back into the garage. And then when we came out here, I opened up this little broom closet. I think it was like 450 square feet in Midtown Manhattan, and made a go of it for a year. And that was a really fun adventure. The pandemic, however, said we have other ideas. And that was still kind of a fledgling growing business. And I actually got very lucky because if the pandemic had started maybe 2 months later, I probably would have signed another lease for a year. And as it worked out just fine. That brings us obviously into, I closed that academy, and I'm sure everybody remembers the world locked up around March of 2020. I started stand-up on Zoom in April of 2020.
Wow, what a story. What a story.
Yeah.
So that's where you started. So in April 2020, you started in stand-up comedy. You weren't in front of a live audience, Bryan, but you were on a Zoom, and that's how you started up, which isn't easy to do because you don't know what kind of reaction you're getting from your material. Bryan Stoops is here. Bryan Stoops Comedy. He is the producer. He's also a promoter. He's also a martial artist who ran his own dojo right out of his residential area that became commercial property out of the garage. He had the dojo going. He was training other individuals in martial arts. He's a martial artist. Also, again, like we mentioned earlier, 22 years as an educator. A very talented gentleman that we have here tonight. He's been in 22 continents. 22 countries, 5 continents. Bryan, I know you would have got me on that. And I've said it before, joking around, but when you're around Bryan, you need your dictionary because this man has a huge vocabulary. Bryan, question for you on stand-up comedy. Where would you say, Bryan, and you've been around a lot of years in comedy now. You started in 2020. You're 6 years into stand-up comedy. You're very active, running shows on a consistent basis. And when I say consistent, multiple shows every month at the Whiskey Cellar in New York City. I see what you're doing. Like I said before, we don't pull any punches here. We say it the way it is. What would you say is the hotbed in stand-up comedy between these 3 locations? Los Angeles, California, New York City, or Austin, Texas right now?
So I've never been to Austin. I haven't. I've only been to San Antonio. It's the only part of Texas I've ever been to. So I can't really comment on Austin with any kind of knowledge. I'm very lucky in that my parents still live in Southern California. We have a bunch of friends. My wife is also from Southern California. We have family. My father-in-law is still out there. My sister-in-law is still out there. So we visit Southern California probably once or twice a year. Um, this is what I would say, Joel, and it's not like I invented this expression. New York is the ideal place to get good at stand-up. There's so many rooms, there's so many mics, there's so many opportunities for stage time. I am very busy. I do try to go up a lot. I'm also humbled at, I have friends who, they're like, well, I go up 80 times a month. It's like, well, I'm not, I'm not at your level. But that I'm bringing that up because that's possible in the New York City scene. What I would say then is the expression goes, you get good in New York, you get famous in LA. Okay. So, I'm not famous. That's not what I'm saying, but things are a little bit more explicit in LA. There's two clubs. Like if I come to LA, I give them dates and get booked. It's a little bit more spelled out, the clubs in general. And I would say in New York, it's a little bit more enigmatic. Like, how do you get past? What does that look like? What's the process? It's a little bit more of a mystery in New York. And this part, I'm not trying to insult anybody because they're both great cities for comedy. And they're both, I'm very protective of California as a state. I was born there. I lived there most of my life. When people talk smack about California, I take that personally. It's a place that matters a lot to me. So I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to pull some kind of East Coast, West Coast nonsense. Both, and obviously I love New York. You have to love it if you're going to try to live here. Doesn't matter what borough. There's something about a New York comedian. If the LA comedians have never been out here, as a New York comedian, you are like a porcelain unicorn. The LA comedians are so mystified by the idea of a New York City comedian. And again, I'm not insulting anybody here. In LA, the rooms are just a little bit softer, I would say. So again, going back to the idea of getting good in New York. New York has tough rooms with New York crowds that have seen it all. And it's great every now and then to take your New York comedian self to LA and play some rooms out there and feel good about your material because you kind of cut your teeth in New York rooms. Also, to be real honest, like a lot of the famous spaces in New York City are dingy basements. That's just the reality. That's the New York chic, the brick wall, So some of the venues in California, even their smaller rooms, it's also nice as a New York City comedian to just go and play some of those larger spaces. They're both great cities. They're both highly recommended.
Yes.
I know I talk a lot. I'll sum up this answer by just saying, like, try to find a place in both environments where you have room to fail before you put yourself in front of or put yourself in rooms where the stakes are maybe a little bit higher. And I would give that same advice. Stand-up's kind of unforgiving that way. I mean, you don't often get those opportunities unless you're doing a bringer show until you've reached a certain level in your performing. But they're both great comedy scenes, Joel.
Bryan, thank you for that answer. That's a very detailed answer. It's Bryan Stoops here tonight. Bryan Stoops, comedy producer and promoter, stand-up comedian. He's martial artist. 22 years as an educator. He just had a comedy special that came out at the Jolly Sailor, South Sea, Portsmouth, United Kingdom. It was a watch party back on May 2nd. Bryan's been up and down New York City. He's very active on stage. He's also very active all around as a promoter, too. And I just wanted to mention to you, we mentioned martial arts, and we mentioned a little bit about Queens, New York City. I wanted to mention real quick, Long Island Wrestling Federation was the organization I worked for, and I wanted to tell you the story. I'm going to tell everybody the story real quick. If you know, everybody wanted to listen to the story, I think they might like this. Long Island Wrestling Federation was ran out of Queens, New York City by Bobby Lombardi, who owned a cab company out in New York City. This is in the 1990s. Every match was a tag match or a six-man tag match. You can imagine the locker room was wall to wall, and the main event was the Battle Royal over the top rope Battle Royal. In the Battle Royal was Primo Canary, the actual Primo Canary III, the great-grandson of Primo Canary, the boxing champion that fought Joe Louis way back, that passed away in 1967, and he was a giant. I was on that lineup in Long Island Wrestling Federation, Queens, New York, Martin Luther King Jr. High School. I was there, Bryan. I wanted to tell you the story because it's kind of humorous, too. I seen Primo Canary, the giant. I didn't want to get nowhere near that guy. You know, he was like taking people's heads off in there. I was in a tag match with Trooper Gilmore versus the late Mr. Grimm, Tony DeVito, and Mike Bell, Mr. Grimm. They were a tag match, and we had the tag match, and it was crazy out there in Queens, New York. And Bobby Lombardi promised me a big payday. I didn't get the big payday, and he said he put me in a nice hotel. I stayed somewhere in Queens, New York, and there was all red lights on the whole night. And there was some, I don't know, some kind of dealings going on. I don't know what it was, but it might be Woman of the Night. I just wanted to mention that story to you, brother, so we get a good little laugh out of that, bro. Queens, New York City, Bryan Stoops. He went from the West Coast to the East Coast. He's been all around the country. He's been to 22 countries. It's 5 continents. He's doing a lot. Tell us about this big special you had out there in United Kingdom, Bryan.
Sure. So I had the opportunity, Joel, the 2024-2025 academic year, I went and lived in England. So Portsmouth is really unique. It's the only island city because it is technically disconnected from the mainland. It's connected by highway there. And so I was living in Portsmouth. I was teaching secondary English. I'm an English teacher, English and literature. And then when I wasn't teaching, I was doing stand-up all over the world. My wife and kids did not go with me. They kind of looked at my face at the end of the school year before that, and they're like, okay, Dad needs something or he's gonna pop. And so went out there for a year, and when I was not teaching, like I said, was doing stand-up. And so Portsmouth is about an hour and a half by train from London. London's got a way bigger scene than Hampshire County, which is where Portsmouth is located. And so I really went all over Europe, and sometimes I would do multiple stops. So, they call it half term in England. You get a week off. And so very often during half term, I would visit, 3 or 4 countries. It's kind of like the East Coast, you can
exactly.
You can do the rail thing. You can do a bus sometimes.
Bryan, pardon me 1 second. I just want to let you know the producers here. We're down to 9 minutes, unfortunately. There's a lot more I want to cover. And I'd like to talk about your special. I'd like to get your social media, Bryan. But if I know and I love your answers. Believe me, brother, I really mean that. But the actual special, how did that come up? Like, did you?
Okay, so that was the culmination. So we filmed that like literally days before I moved back home. That was the hour that I developed The hour was called a Yank in Portsmouth. You know, Yank is a term for Americans.
Good stuff.
And we filmed it in a proper pub in Southsea. That's a neighborhood in Portsmouth. Like 3 or 4 nights before I moved home. And so really fun.
That's great.
And kind of like a nice, like, culminating experience for that year.
That's great, Bryan. Well, you know, Bryan Stoops is here tonight. He's got his special out there. It was filmed out in Portsmouth, United Kingdom, the Jolly Sailor, South Sea. Let's talk about this. This guy right here has been doing a lot on the comedy scene. He loves what he does. Bryan, we have something on the show called Dealing the Names. I throw a name at you. I need one statement, please, or one word. All right, brother? Okay. The first name on Dealing the Names for you tonight is Ashley Lynn Evans.
Musical.
Very good. The second name on your list tonight, Bryan, Dealing the Names with Bryan Stoops. Bryan Stoops Comedy. He's here tonight. He just released his 1 hour special, and you got him here tonight, live, Wrestle with Comedy. The second name is Andrew Dice Clay.
7th grade.
That was one of the best. And again, you know, if you have a statement or one word, but that was a good one, brother.
I had the cassette tape. It just said Dice. It was a black and white. Obviously, some of his shtick hasn't aged very well. It was an essential piece of controversial stand-up at the time.
Number 3 on the list is Kelly Fine.
New friend. Yeah, funny, reliable, a new friend. Good comedian.
Number 4 on the list is Ralphie May, the late Ralphie May. The late, great Ralphie May.
Yeah, so you mentioned Ralphie May, you make me think of Dat Fan. Dat Fan won the first season of Last Comic Standing, and Ralphie May in second, and Dat has been a major influence on me.
Wow, Bryan, that was a great one. We appreciate that detail on the number 4 on Dealing the Names. And number 5, the late, great Rodney Dangerfield.
Consistent. That's a model of consistency and being really clear on who his persona was and how that guided what he did.
That's great. Bryan Stoops is here tonight. Wrestle with Comedy. I'm your host, the Real Deal Joel Davis. We're rounding down to about 6 minutes, folks. Any questions or comments, bring them in. We appreciate it. If you can hit like, and we also appreciate a subscription if you haven't done so already. Bryan's been around. He worked at the Gotham Comedy Club in New York City, the best comedy club near the Me Theater. He's been up and down and through New York, but he's also been in other countries and continents. And, you know, someone like Bryan Stoops has a lot of, you know, not only energy, but he also has that, you know, that positive energy, and he brings it to the table. Bryan, a quick question before we get to your social media and your upcoming shows, because I know you got upcoming shows, brother. You're one of the most modest guys I know, but I know you got a lot to say. Bryan never was lost for words, folks, if you didn't know. Bryan Stoops, love you, brother. And I got to mention, I love your material about, you know, people noticing the best thing about you, your eyes, and you say, but they don't mention the bags under my eyes. I just love that. Bryan, your favorite out of, what would you pick as your favorite? What do you enjoy the most, Bryan? Do you enjoy being a stand-up comedian or being a producer more? Just a real quick question.
Performing stand-up. Okay, more than being a producer.
Okay, very good. I figured that's what it was. Bryan, what do you have coming up? Let's talk about it. What do you have for shows coming up, and any social media you'd like to tell our audience tonight?
Sure. So everybody, we've just been talking about Bryan Stoops Comedy. So that's Bryan with a Y. I like to say spelled correctly. You can find me at BryanStoopsComedy.com or on Instagram at Bryan Stoops Comedy. The biggest thing two things that I want to plug. Thursday, June 11th, I'm at the Tank Theater. That is a beautiful 98-seat theater in Midtown Manhattan. We have a mixed show. New York City comedy legend Al Lubell is my special guest. That's a 9:30 p.m. show. And then the next day, Friday, June 12th, this time at 7 p.m., we're back at the Tank Theater. Isabel Hagen, who is a superstar, she just killed it on The Tonight Show pretty recently, is my special guest. We have another mixed bill. Those are the main things that I'd like everybody to be aware of. We'll be back at the Whiskey Cellar with 3 shows in late June, the 3rd and 4th Sunday of the month and the 4th Wednesday of the month. But again, you can keep up with all these things at Bryan Stoops Comedy. The main thing I wanted to plug were those shows at the Tank. So we really need, if you'd like to see some incredible stand-up in a beautiful theater, I want to encourage everybody to get tickets, and you can easily get tickets on my website or on my socials. The only other thing I really want to plug, Joel, and I'm cognizant of the time, my other background, my original performing arts background is as a magician. So I have created a one-man show about autobiographical show as it's magic, martial arts, and stand-up that's making its off-Broadway debut in the United Solo Theater Fest. That'll be October 20th.
Wow.
Obviously, yes, that is very much in the future, but follow me on my socials and my website. I'm also writing a book to go with the premiere of that show. I'm about 1/5 of the way through the book. The book is going to happen before the show happens. Those are the things I'm most excited about.
Bryan, that is so great that you mentioned it. On my notes here, too, I wanted to ask you, because I've been following you on Instagram myself. We became friends, and we've also shared the stage together, and we're both making our way up the ladder in the stand-up comedy business / entertainment. We really are, and it's great to be able to work with someone like you, but I do have on my notes here, I wanted to ask you about the props, because I've seen you use the props more than ever on stage, and some of the stuff is absolutely hilarious. A magician, you're welcome, Bryan. You know, the thing is you bring in these props, and they're hilarious. Bryan, I'm going to start a statement. I'd like you to finish the statement, one of our segments before we say goodnight, Bryan.
Sure.
Bryan Stoops here tonight, Wrestling with Comedy. Here we go. Finish the statement on Wrestling with Comedy. Here it is. In stand-up comedy, when I started in the year 2000, I never thought
I would have the opportunities to meet as many funny people, perform in as many amazing places, and have as many cool stories as I have as a result of stand-up.
That is wonderful. It was Bryan Stoops here tonight. Bryan Stoops, we're going to drop his link on Instagram. He's got some big shows coming. I mentioned the Tank show. You can get those tickets. He's hitting it. That's, I believe, 5 shows just in the month of June that Bryan Stoops will be involved in. Bryan Stoops has performed in 22 countries, 5 continents. He's performed at the Gotham Comedy Club in New York City. He's up and down. He's up and down the New Jersey, New England. He's a West Coast to the East Coast. Bryan Stoops has been there, done it. Bryan, thank you for being on the show. Until next time, folks, keep it real at all costs. Good night, everybody.